At 7:59 a.m., 270 motorcycles thundered into Warren, Ohio, surrounding a small diner. Inside, 5 rich kids were laughing. They were celebrating the destruction of Mark Jensen's garage, a widower's family business they had demolished in the night. What they didn't know was that Mark, a quiet veteran's son, had once fixed the lead biker's Harley for free. Now, the entire Forgotten Patriots MC was here, not for breakfast, but to teach 5 untouchable kids what real consequences feel like, with hammers and paint scrapers in hand. Before we dive deeper into story, I need to know, where are you watching this from? Help us get this channel to 1,000 subscribers. God bless you for joining the family. In the hollowed-out heart of the American Rust Belt, where factories stand like steel skeletons against a gray Ohio sky, lives a man named Mark Jensen. He is a quiet man in his 40s, but his eyes carry the ancient weight of a widower. His entire world has been compressed into 2 things: his 9-year-old daughter, Lily, and the failing garage his father built. Mark is the quintessential good man, the kind of man who still believes in handshake deals and helping neighbors, a relic of an America that has long since faded. He is a man of profound, quiet integrity, which, in a town like Warren, Ohio, makes him an easy target. Lily is the only light in his world. She is 9, a small, resilient sprout growing in the cracks of this concrete decay, her crayon drawings taped over the greasy schematics in the office. Before we dive deeper into Mark's impossible fight, the narrator needs to know where you're watching this from. Drop your city and your country in the comments right now. Let the world see how far this story travels. Lily is the reason Mark still fights, the reason he gets up every morning to face a world that seems intent on crushing him. She is his why, and his goodness is his only shield. The battleground is Jensen and Son Motor Works, a single-bay garage built of faded red brick, sandwiched between a boarded-up VFW hall and a diner struggling to keep its lights on. This street is a graveyard of the American dream. The air itself is heavy, smelling of cold rain, old tires, and the metallic tang of forgotten industry. Mark's shop is the last holdout of a bygone era, a stubborn monument of honor in a landscape of corporate greed and systematic decay. It is not just a building, it is the last piece of his father's soul. Inside, the shop is a sanctuary, a museum of a better time. It smells of worn leather, motor oil, and the faint, phantom scent of the cigars his father used to smoke. The walls are a map of his life, his father's folded flag from Vietnam in a dusty case, a faded Polaroid of his late wife Sarah, laughing, and the complex diagrams of engines long since obsolete. Every wrench hanging on the pegboard was held by his father's hands, and now they are held by his, a sacred lineage of grease and steel. This is why he cannot sell. Mark Jensen is a pillar of this broken community, even if the community doesn't know how to protect him. He is the man who fixes the neighborhood kid's bicycle chain for free. He is the man who lets the local veterans, the ones forgotten by the VA, pay for their motorcycle repairs when they can, knowing that when will likely be never. He operates on an unbreakable code of honor, a code that is bankrupting him. He is good, almost to a fault, in a world that sees such goodness as weakness. The weight of this integrity is crushing. The fluorescent light over his main bay flickers with a maddening, persistent buzz, a constant reminder that he's months behind on the electric bill. A stack of envelopes stamped "Final Notice" in aggressive red ink sits on his desk, hidden from Lily under a parts catalog. He smiles for her. He makes her dinner. But the anxiety is a cold physical knot in his gut. He isn't fighting to get rich. He is fighting, minute by minute, just to keep the bank from seizing his father's legacy. The threat isn't abstract. It has a face and a name. A powerful local developer, Mr. Wealthy, wants the entire block. He sees the street not as a community, but as a spreadsheet, and Mark's shop is an annoying variable messing up his profit margin. He wants to bulldoze the VFW hall, the diner, and Jensen and Son to build luxury condos that no one in Warren can afford. His offers are insults, pennies on the dollar, designed not to negotiate, but to intimidate. He is the shark, and he smells the blood of Mark's debt in the water. Worse than the father is the son. Kyle Wealthy, 19 and rotting with an inherited sense of impunity, leads a small gang of rich kid thugs who call themselves the Untouchables. They drive trucks their fathers paid for and view Mark's refusal to sell as a personal insult. They are the face of the new America, arrogant, destructive, and protected. They see Mark not as a man, but as a stubborn stain that needs to violently scrubbed from their father's future development. Their cruelty is casual, and their power is absolute, and the system, the one designed to protect good men like Mark, is complicit. When Mark reports the initial minor vandalism, slashed tires, graffiti, the local sheriff just sighs. Sheriff Brody is a man who knows which side his bread is buttered on, and it isn't Mark's. They're just kids, Mark, Brody advises, not even taking notes. You know who his father is. My hands are tied. Honestly, you should just take the man's offer. You can't win this. The system hasn't just failed. It has actively chosen the side of the oppressor. Mark is utterly alone. He has no money, no political power, and no allies. The law has abandoned him. The town watches with pity, but no one will stand with him. It is just one decent man and his small daughter, guarding a single brick building against a tide of corruption. The fight isn't about property. It's about a promise. He promised his dying father he would keep the doors open. Mark Jensen would rather be broken than bend, and the world, it seems, is more than happy to oblige. It happens 2 weeks before the end. The night is a classic Ohio misery, a cold November rain lashing the streets of Warren, turning the asphalt into a black, shivering mirror. Mark is moments from closing, his bones aching with a fatigue that goes deeper than just the day's work. He's wiping down his father's workbench, the smell of solvent and old steel, a familiar comfort. His only thought to get home and read Lily a bedtime story. The shop is his only sanctuary, a small island of warm yellow light in the swallowing darkness of the dying street. Suddenly, a sound cuts through the storm, a violent metallic scream followed by a dying guttural cough. It's the sound of a heavy motorcycle choking out its last breath. A massive shape, a bike that looks more like a bull, limps to a halt directly in front of his open bay door, the engine dying with a final, pathetic clatter. A man dismounts, a man who seems carved from the storm itself. He is a mountain of wet black leather, a giant who has to duck his head to even consider coming through the doorway. This is not a customer. This is an omen. This is Grizz. He is a wall of a man, his face a landscape of beard and scars, hidden behind a cascade of rain-soaked hair. His vest is a map of his life, heavy with patches Mark can't decipher, all except one, a small, stark rectangle that reads, Iraq. Combat veteran. He is terrifying. He is the man society crosses the street to avoid, the man cops pull over just for existing. He looks angry, dangerous, and in this moment, completely stranded, hundreds of miles from anywhere he could possibly call home. The narrator must tell you, this is the man the system already threw away. This is the man who gets followed in convenience stores, the man the VA put on a waiting list until his rage turned to ice. He has seen the absolute worst of humanity, both in the deserts of Fallujah and on the indifferent highways of his own country. He lives by a code, a brutal, simple, honorable code, but it is not a code this town would ever understand. He is the other, the feared, the forgotten patriot. Grizz stomps into the shop, his boots leaving puddles of mud and rain on the concrete floor. He doesn't ask for help. He doesn't plead. He radiates a defensive hostility. He pulls a thick, wet wad of $100 bills from his pocket and slams it onto the counter with a wet thud. The cash soaks into a stack of invoices. Chain snapped. It's an old shovel head. I need it fixed. Now, he growls, his voice like gravel in a blender. He is expecting to be told no. He is expecting a fight. Mark just looks at the man. He looks at the puddle of water growing on his clean floor. He looks at the desperate, angry pile of cash, and then his eyes lock onto that veteran's patch. The entire temperature of the room shifts. The exhaustion in Mark's shoulders straightens. He doesn't move for a long second. Then, slowly, deliberately, he uses one greasy finger to push the entire wet stack of money back across the counter. Grizz tenses, his hand balling into a fist, thinking this is the rejection. Push it in, Mark says quietly, his voice tired but firm. Grizz is stunned into silence. This is not the script. He's confused, but he's a man who understands quiet authority. He wordlessly muscles the massive broken motorcycle into the center of the service bay. Mark flicks on the bright, buzzing overhead lights, illuminating the problem. The chain is a mangled disaster, twisted and snapped. It's not a simple repair. It's a catastrophic failure on a bike so old, parts are impossible to find. I can't replace it tonight, Mark says, already grabbing his welding helmet, but I can fabricate a new link. It'll be stronger than the original. It'll hold. He doesn't wait for an answer. He fires up his TIG welder. For the next 4 hours, long, after every other light on the street has gone dark, Mark Jensen works. He doesn't talk. He just focuses, a surgeon of steel, cutting, grinding, and welding. The only sounds are the rhythmic hiss of the welder and the relentless drumming of the rain on the tin roof. Grizz just watches, dripping in the corner. He's a statue of silent disbelief. He watches this quiet, unassuming man work with a precision and care that he hasn't seen seen in years. He's a man who has been let down by everyone, by his government, by his family, by the system. He doesn't understand what is happening. He is waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the catch, for the moment Mark will reveal his true price. At one point, Lily, in her pajamas, pads out from the small back office where she'd fallen asleep on a cot. She rubs her eyes, sees the mountain of a man standing in the shadows, and doesn't flinch, not for a second. She walks right past him, goes to the old humming soda machine Mark keeps for customers, and pulls out a cold bottle of root beer. Then she walks back, her small hand outstretched, offering it to the giant. "You look thirsty," she says simply, her voice sleepy. "My daddy can fix anything." Grizz stares at the bottle in his massive, scarred hand. He looks like he might shatter. This simple act of pure, unfiltered kindness from a child, this absolute, profound lack of fear, has pierced a part of his armor he thought was impenetrable. He looks at this little girl, then at her father, and he feels a deep, unfamiliar ache in his chest. He just nods, unable to speak, and drinks the soda. The gesture feels almost like a sacrament. Finally, at nearly 1 a.m, the work is done. Mark wipes his hands on a rag, his face smeared with grease and exhaustion. The chain is fixed, the link a small, perfect piece of fabricated art. The bike is whole. Grizz stands, pulling his wallet out again, this time with a deep, profound respect. "You didn't have to do that." "How much?" "I mean it." "Your time, the custom part. Name your price, man." Mark just shakes his head, turning off the bay lights. He's too tired to argue. "My father was in Vietnam," Mark says, his voice quiet but final. "He built this shop on one rule: we don't charge veterans for labor, ever." He gestures to the door. "You're good to go. Get home safe. It's a bad night to be on the road." Grizz is completely, utterly floored. He is a man of honor, a man who lives by a strict code of debts and payments, and this single father has just given him hours of his life and asked for nothing. This act of pure, unadulterated goodness, with no expectation of reward, has thrown his entire worldview off its axis. He understands in that moment that Mark is a better man than he will ever be. The big man is silent for a full minute, the rain hammering outside. He stares at Mark, really sees him. He sees the good man, the tired father, the struggling business. He sees the past due notices on the desk that Mark hadn't bothered to hide. He sees the unshakable integrity. He reaches deep into his leather vest, past patches that tell stories of battles both foreign and domestic, and pulls out something. It's a small worn card. It's black, with a simple silver logo of a bald eagle crying a single tear, the patch of the Forgotten Patriots Motorcycle Club. It has a name, Grizz, and a single phone number. He presses it firmly into Mark's calloused hand. "I don't know you, and you don't know me," Grizz rumbles, his voice thick with an emotion Mark can't place. "But you're family now. You understand me? This world, it ain't built for good men like you." Grizz grips Mark's shoulder, a gesture that almost brings Mark to his knees. "If this world or anyone in it tries to roll over you, if they treat you wrong, you call this number. It doesn't matter when. It doesn't matter why. You call it, we answer." Grizz stalks out into the rain, mounts his repaired bike, and with a roar that shakes the very windows of the shop, he is gone. A week passes. The card from Grizz sits on Mark's cluttered desk, feeling less like a lifeline and more like a strange, rain-soaked dream. The developer, the elder Mr. Wealthy, decides to end the game. He arrives, not in a work truck, but in a black, gleaming Mercedes, flanked by a lawyer in a suit that costs more than Mark makes in a month. He doesn't come inside. He stands on the sidewalk, a king surveying a slum. He makes his final offer. It's not an offer. It's an insult, barely enough to cover Mark's debts, let alone provide a future for Lily. Mark is standing in the open bay door, holding his father's favorite ball-peen hammer, its wooden handle smooth with decades of use. He looks at the developer's smug, condescending face. He thinks of his promise. He thinks of his father. He thinks of Lily. He looks at the man, the lawyer, and the black car, and he says 2 words, his voice quiet but unbreakable: "Get out." The developer's smile doesn't falter. It just tightens into something cold. "You will regret this, Mr. Jensen." The lawyer sniffs. Some things in this town are just inevitable. They leave, and Mark knows with a chilling certainty that he has just signed his own death warrant. That night, the inevitable arrives. It doesn't come with lawyers. It comes with sledgehammers. Kyle and his 4 friends, drunk on impunity and their father's expensive whiskey, descend on the shop at 3 a.m. This isn't the minor vandalism of before. This isn't graffiti or a slashed tire. This is an execution. They are here to erase the problem. They park their truck down the street and walk, carrying their tools of destruction, their laughter echoing in the dead silent street. They feel nothing but the thrill of absolute power, the joy of destroying something a better man built. The first sound is the explosion of the front plate glass window, the one that still bears the fading hand-painted gold leaf letters of Jensen and Son. The The glass showers the sidewalk and the shop interior, a crystalline bomb signaling the start of the assault. They pour in through the broken frame, a wave of mindless, privileged destruction. They are not just vandals, they are a sickness. They came to do what their fathers taught them, that anything that stands in the way of what they want must be torn down. They swarm the shop like a pack of hyenas. They overturn the massive red steel tool chests, scattering decades of specialized, irreplaceable tools across the oil-slicked floor. They kick over shelves of vintage parts, sending carburetors and gaskets skittering into the darkness. They take baseball bats to the antique cash register, laughing with high-pitched, cruel whoops as the drawer springs open, revealing the paltry few dollars from the day's sales. This is a game to them. This is how they spend their Friday nights, erasing the lives of men who will never have their advantages. This isn't just random chaos. It is targeted, personal cruelty. They find Mark's small back office, the heart of his sanctuary. They rip his father's framed army flag from the wall and stomp on the glass. They pull down Lily's crayon drawings, tearing them to pieces, grinding them into the floor with their expensive boots. They find the faded Polaroid of Mark's late wife, Sarah, and smear it with grease, leaving it on the broken desk. They are not just breaking a building. They are systematically dismantling a man's entire history and identity. Then Kyle sees it. In the back corner, under a canvas tarp, sits the project, a 1950 Indian Chief motorcycle. It's a skeleton of chrome and faded red paint, the last thing Mark and his father were restoring together before he passed. It is Mark's most sacred object, the physical manifestation of his bond with his dad. Kyle's eyes light up with a special kind of malice. He lifts his sledgehammer, a grin splitting his face, and brings it down with all his strength onto the sculpted, irreplaceable gas tank, again and again, until the frame is bent and the dream is dead. To finish their masterpiece, they take out the spray paint. In huge, dripping, angry red letters, they graffiti the entire side of the building, a message for the whole town. Sell or it gets worse. And on the adjacent wall, a declaration of their power. This is Wealthy's town. They even spray paint the mangled wreckage of the Indian chief. They have delivered their message, effectively, signing their names with absolute arrogance, knowing with chilling certainty that there will be no consequences. They leave, their laughter fading as their truck speeds away. Mark arrives at dawn, as he always does, coffee in hand, ready to open up. He sees the graffiti first, and his heart stops. The hot coffee cup slips from his numb fingers and shatters on the pavement, the brown liquid mixing with the shards of his front window. He stands frozen for a moment, praying that the damage is only on the outside. He smells the sharp chemical tang of spray paint and paint thinner. He's afraid to look, afraid that what he'll see will be the end of him. He steps through the broken frame of his front window, his feet crunching on the glass. The devastation is absolute. It's not a shop. It's a war zone. It is a tomb. The morning light streams in, illuminating the chaos. His tools, his livelihood, scattered like garbage. The silence is profound, heavier than the destruction itself. He walks through the wreckage in a daze, his mind unable to process the sheer scale of the violation. This was not a robbery. This was a hate crime. He makes it to the back office. He sees Lily's drawings, torn and stomped. He sees his wife's picture, desecrated. And then he sees the Indian. He falls to his knees. A sound is ripped from his chest, a dry, agonizing sob that contains all the loss, all the grief, all the injustice of his life. He doesn't just see a broken motorcycle. He sees his father's broken body. He sees his promise shattered. He is not just defeated, he is annihilated. The good man has finally, irrevocably been broken. The local sheriff, a man named Brody, pulls up an hour later, his cruiser rolling slowly to a stop. He gets out, a fresh styrofoam cup of coffee in his hand. He sees the carnage. He sees the graffiti. He shakes his head, putting on his best concerned public servant face. Lord, Mark, this is just terrible. What a mess. Kids these days. He doesn't even bother to take out a notepad. He knows exactly who did it, and he knows exactly what he is going to do about it. Mark looks up from the floor, his eyes hollow, begging. You know who this was, Brody, he whispers, his voice trembling. He points a shaking finger at the red paint. It's them. It's Kyle Wealthy. It's his father. The sheriff sighs. A long, theatrical, tired sound. He suddenly becomes very interested in a spot on his boot. Now, Mark, let's not jump to conclusions. We can't go accusing a prominent family's son without any actual proof. It was dark, no witnesses. You know how this goes. It's your word against his. My word, Mark repeats, his voice rising with a desperate, cracked hysteria. They signed their damn names on my wall. The sheriff holds up a hand, his face hardening. That's circumstantial, Mark. We don't know who did that. Could be anyone. He is openly, shamelessly, covering for them. He is a cog in the machine that protects the powerful. You've been stubborn about that sale. You're making waves. People don't like that. He's not just failing to find justice. He is actively blaming the victim. My advice, Sheriff Brody says, adjusting his belt, his tone shifting from fake sympathy to cold, practical advice. My hands are tied. There's no real crime here. Not one we can prove. This is vandalism. Your insurance should cover most of it, right? He knows Mark is underinsured. He knows this is the killing blow. Honestly, Mark, just take the offer. You can't fight these people. This town is changing. It's not for guys like us anymore. And there it is. The system, the law, the good people have officially failed. It is the ultimate betrayal. The system is not just blind. It is corrupt. It is a willing partner to the oppressor. Mark is left alone, sitting in the glass and the grease, a king surveying the ruins of his tiny, honorable kingdom. He has no money, no insurance, and no hope. The law has told him to his face that his life, his father's legacy, is worthless. He is completely, utterly, and finally abandoned. He is still sitting there an hour later when Lily arrives, her small backpack on, ready for him to walk her to school. She stops in the doorway, her small hand flying to her mouth. She sees the destruction. She sees her drawings, ruined. She sees the Indian, broken. And then she sees her father, a man she has never seen, cry, sitting on the floor, weeping silently into his hands. She doesn't cry. Her face gets cold with a 9-year-old's pure, simple rage. In the rubble of the office, she spots a small black card, half hidden under a broken picture frame. It's the card from the big, scary, kind biker. She picks it up, her small fingers tracing the silver logo. She walks over to her father, who is just a hollow shell. She pushes the card into his numb, greasy hand. "Daddy," she whispers, her voice trembling but firm. "What about the friend? The soldier? You helped him. He said to call." Mark stares at the card. He stares at the number. It feels like a lifetime ago. He has no options left. The system has failed. His honor has failed. His goodness has failed. He is a man with nothing left to lose. He pulls out his cracked cell phone, his hands shaking so badly he can barely type the numbers. He dials, not with hope, but with the last dying breath of desperation. The phone rings. Just once, a low, gravelly voice answers. Yeah, Mark's voice is broken, a dry rattle. "Grizz, this is Mark Jensen, the mechanic, from Warren." He takes a ragged breath, the smell of paint thinner burning his nose. They came. They destroyed it all. "Grizz, they broke my father's bike." There is a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. It's not a silence of sympathy. It is a cold, sharpening silence. The sound of a fuse being lit. The narrator can tell you, Mark didn't just make a phone call. He pulled a pin. Grizz's voice, when it comes back, is not the weary traveler. It is the road captain. It is cold steel. "Where are they, Mark?" Mark is still on the phone, his voice a dry rasp, trembling in the ruins of his shop. "Where are they?" Grizz repeats, the question not a query, but a command that demands an answer. They're at the diner," Mark stammers, the words catching in his throat. "Millie's, across the street. They're there every morning, 8 a.m. They sit in the window, and they laugh." He names them, Kyle Wealthy and his friends. Grizz doesn't say, "I'm sorry." He doesn't say, "We'll see." He just says, "Stay put, Mark. We're coming." Then the line clicks dead, leaving a silence more profound than the destruction. Mark is left in a daze. He doesn't know what he just did. He doesn't know if he just called a friend, or if he just lit a match to the rest of his town. He just sits on the curb, pulling Lily close, wrapping her in his grease-stained jacket as the sun begins to bleed over the horizon. The town of Warren begins to wake up around him. People walk by on their way to work, staring at the graffiti, shaking their heads in pity, whispering. They see a broken man. They see a lost cause. He is completely, utterly alone. At 7:55 a.m., the scene is exactly as Mark described. Across the street, the bell on Millie's diner door jingles. Kyle and his 4 friends swagger in, triumphant, high on their own power. They slide into the big window booth, the one that gives them a perfect panoramic view of the destruction they caused. They order pancakes, their laughter loud and arrogant, echoing across the street. They point at the shattered Jensen and Son window, slapping each other on the back. They are untouchable, and they know it. They are the sons of the new kings of Ohio. At 7:58 a.m., the first sound. It is not a sound. It is a feeling, a low, seismic vibration in the pavement. Mark feels it through the concrete curb he's sitting on. Inside Millie's, the coffee cups on the saucers begin to rattle. The laughter in the window booth stops. Kyle looks confused, a forkful of pancake halfway to his mouth. "Is that thunder?" one of his friends asks, looking up at the clear, cold blue sky. At 7:59 a.m., it is thunder. It is the thunder of the gods, a man-made mechanical apocalypse. From the east, a single, piercing headlight appears on the main street. Then it is joined by 2, then 10, then 50. From the west, the same. It is not a small group. It is an invasion. A rolling, deafening tide of Harley-Davidson engines. A sound so loud it feels like the sky is being torn in half. The sound of judgment. It is a black and chrome river of steel. A rolling, unstoppable flood of leather and metal that floods the main street of Warren. They are the Forgotten Patriots MC, and they have brought all their allies, all the other clubs who respect the code. The narrator can tell you, this isn't a handful of bikers. It is an army. 270 motorcycles. They pour into the small town, their engines thundering in perfect, intimidating unison. A sound that says, we are here. The town stops. The mailman freezes on the sidewalk, his bag half empty. Cars pull over, their drivers staring in disbelief and terror. This is not a parade. This is a show of force. The bikers don't ride past. They stop. With the precision of a military unit, they form a 3-deep, perfectly organized wall. They seal off the entire block, from the VFW hall to the diner. They create a perimeter. They create a battlefield. Then, as one, all 270 engines are cut. The sudden, absolute silence is a physical weight. It is terrifying. It is a vacuum of power, sucking all the air and all the noise out of the street. The only sound is the metallic chink, tink, tink, tink of 270 engines cooling at the same time. The town of Warren holds its collective breath, hiding behind their curtains. This is a moment that will be burned into the town's memory forever. Sheriff Brody cracks the door of his station, a block down. He peers out, his coffee mug steaming in his hand. He sees the ocean of leather vests. He sees the 1% patches. He sees the hard, unblinking stares of men who have seen far worse than a small-town cop with a speeding ticket quota. He quietly closes his door, locks the deadbolt, and walks to the back office, turning off the lights. The law has officially clocked out. The system has evaporated. Grizz dismounts his bike. He moves with the slow, deliberate grace of a predator. He is not in a hurry. He takes off his gloves, one finger at a time, tucking them into his belt. He is the general, and his army is at his back. He walks past Mark, who is still on the curb, his mouth open, unable to process the scale of what is happening. He looks like a man seeing an angel or a demon. Grizz places one giant leather-gloved hand on Mark's shoulder, a silent promise of protection that says more than any words could. Stay with your girl, he rumbles, his voice a low vibration. Then he turns his attention to the diner. His gaze is flat, cold, and absolute. He starts to walk, his boots heavy on the pavement. The street is his. Inside Millie's, the scene is one of pure, uncut terror. Kyle and his friends are pale, their faces the color of spoiled milk. Their arrogance has evaporated, replaced by the primal fear of the prey. Their privilege has just hit a wall of leather and steel. Their father's money is a useless currency here. They are trapped in the booth, staring at the army that has assembled just for them. They are no longer the untouchables. They are just 5 scared little boys. The small bell on the diner door jingles, a sound so gentle and out of place it's almost comical. Grizz ducks to enter. He fills the entire doorway, blocking out the sun, plunging the diner into shadow. He doesn't shout. He doesn't draw a weapon. He just walks to the booth, the floorboards creaking under his weight. He is a walking mountain of quiet, controlled rage. The entire diner is frozen. He looks down at Kyle, his eyes as cold as a morgue. He doesn't say a word. He just points one massive scarred finger at the boy, then jerks his head toward the door. That is all. 10 more bikers, each as large as Grizz, file in silently, surrounding the booth, cutting off all escape. Their presence is an undeniable, unarguable command. Get up, Grizz says, his voice a low growl that cuts through the silent diner like a chainsaw. The boys, trembling so hard they can barely move, slide out of the booth, their pancake breakfast forgotten. This is the walk of shame. The bikers escort them out, not touching them, but hurting them with their sheer presence, marching them across the street into the cold morning air. They line the 5 boys up on the sidewalk, forcing them to face their handiwork, to face the graffiti, to face the ruins of Mark's shop, to face the man they broke. They are surrounded by a silent, unmoving wall of 270 men. Kyle is hyperventilating, tears of fear and humiliation streaming down his face. He has never, in his entire life, faced a single consequence. A black Mercedes squeals to a stop, driving onto the sidewalk. Mr. Wealthy, Kyle's father, gets out, his face purple with rage. What is this? What the hell do you think you're doing? I'll have all of you arrested. I own this town. I'll sue. His voice trails off as Grizz takes one slow, deliberate step toward him. Just one step. The developer, a man used to winning every fight with a checkbook, shuts his mouth. Grizz turns his back on the developer, the ultimate gesture of disrespect. He looks at the 5 shaking boys. "You did this," Grizz states. It is not a question. Kyle, trying to find his courage, stammers, We didn't. You have no proof. You can't." Grizz just smiles, a cold, thin-lipped expression that holds no humor. "We're not the cops, kid. We don't need proof. We are the consequences." This is the moment. The town is watching. The system has failed. The law has hidden. And a new, older form of justice has taken its place. Right now, the narrator has to ask you, if you believe power shouldn't protect predators, smash that like button. Your engagement proves people care more about justice than politics. This is the pivot point, where the world either stands by or stands up, and the forgotten patriots have made their choice. Grizz turns back to the terrified boys. He looks at their soft, clean hands, the hands of boys who have never worked a day in their lives. "You like to break things," he rumbles. "Today you're going to learn how to build." He signals to his brothers. The town waits for the chains, for the violence, but the bikers walk to their saddlebags, and they don't pull out weapons. They pull out tools, hammers, crowbars, saws. The forgotten patriots didn't just come for a fight. They came to work. Grizz tosses a bundle of heavy work gloves and paint scrapers at Kyle's feet. The thud on the pavement is a gavel strike. "You start with the graffiti," he commands, his voice a low growl that carries over the silent street. "All of you." The 5 boys, their faces streaked with tears and snot, scramble for the tools. Under the watchful, unblinking, silent gaze of 270 men, the untouchables begin the humiliating, back-breaking work of scraping their own arrogant paint off the bricks. Kyle's father sputters, but one look from Grizz, a look that promises consequences far beyond a courtroom, silences him permanently. He just watches, impotent, as his son's privilege is scrubbed away. But this is not the real work. The boys are just the cleanup crew, a symbolic gesture of humiliation. The real work begins as the bikers, like a disciplined, leather-clad construction crew, swarm the shop. These are not just bikers. They are union carpenters, master electricians, welders, and glaziers from 3 states over. They are the blue-collar heart of America, the men who actually build the country, and they are here to fix what the parasites tried to break. A biker who owns a glass company in Pennsylvania barks measurements for the new plate glass window, and a truck is dispatched. Within minutes, the street, once silent with dread, is filled with the sounds of creation. The sharp thwack of hammers, the high-pitched whine of power saws, the hiss of welding torches. They don't just repair the shop, they rebuild it. They reinforce the broken door frame with new steel. A team of electricians, led by a man they call Sparky, doesn't just fix the lights, they rewire the entire bay, installing bright new LED fixtures that Mark could never have afforded. They are a whirlwind of positive creation, violently erasing the night of destruction. The most sacred act happens in the back corner. A half-dozen of the oldest bikers, the graybeards who have been building engines since before Kyle was born, wheel the mangled 1950 Indian chief into the center of the bay. They lay out a clean tarp. With the reverence of surgeons in an operating theater, they begin the meticulous, loving work of piecing Mark's father's legacy back together. A master welder, his hands steady, begins to repair the cracked frame, his touch gentle, his focus absolute. This is not a repair, it is a resurrection. Mark just stands there, Lily holding his hand, and he weeps. He is not weeping in sadness. He is weeping in overwhelming, suffocating relief. He watches this army of strangers, these men the world told him to fear, rebuild his entire life from the ashes. They work for 10 hours straight, without pause, fueled by coffee and a shared sense of cold, righteous fury. The sun beats down, and the 5 boys, now blistered and sunburned, are forced to ferry water and materials, reduced to laborers for the men they would have crossed the street to avoid. The town of Warren, no longer hiding behind their curtains, comes out to watch. They stand in silence, humbled and ashamed. The diner, Millie's, seeing what's happening, starts sending over trays of free coffee and sandwiches for the entire crew. The bikers, gruffly, accept. The narrative of the town is being rewritten in real time. The men they called thugs and outlaws are showing more honor and community than the developer or the sheriff ever did. The monsters are the saviors, and the pillars of the community are the villains. By sunset, the shop is not just repaired, it is better, it is stronger. The graffiti is gone. The brick scrubbed clean. The new plate glass window gleams. The Jensen and Son name already professionally repainted by a pinstriper in the club. The tools are on new reinforced steel shelves. The Indian chief, while not finished, is whole again, its frame true, its tank welded and primed. The bikers have cleaned every part, organizing the entire project for Mark, leaving it ready for him to complete his father's work. Grizz, covered in sweat and grease, walks over to Mark. He presses a thick white envelope into Mark's hand. Mark looks inside. It's filled with cash. Thousands of dollars. What is this? Mark stammers. We pay our debts. Grizz says simply. That's for the materials. That's for the window. The rest is for Lily. And for you to get back on your feet. Then, Grizz takes off his own vest. He unzips it and hands it to Mark. You're not just a friend, Grizz says. You're family. You're a patriot. Don't you forget it. Grizz then turns to Kyle, who is sitting on the curb, his hands raw and bleeding, his arrogance completely shattered. Grizz crouches down, getting in the boy's face, his voice a deadly whisper. You feel that? Grizz asks quietly, gesturing to the boy's blistered hands. That's called work. You and your father, you think you own this town, but you're just parasites. You take, we build. He lets the words hang in the air, a final judgment. His voice drops even lower, a sound that Kyle will hear in his nightmares for the rest of his life. If you, or your friends, or your father's lawyers, ever come within 1 mile of this man, his daughter, or this shop again, I want you to listen for the thunder, because the next time you hear us coming, we will not be bringing tools. He taps Kyle on the cheek, a gesture both paternal and menacing. We clear? Kyle just nods, unable to speak, tears of pure terror tracking through the grime on his face. A signal is given. The bikers pack their tools. They secure their bikes. The street is cleaner than when they arrived. They mount their machines. Grizz gives Mark a final firm nod. You're not alone, brother, he says. Then, as one, 270 engines roar to life, a deafening, triumphant salute that rattles every window in Warren, a sound of victory. And just like that, they are gone. They ride out of town, a river of chrome disappearing into the deep red Ohio sunset, leaving behind a rebuilt shop, a humbled villain, and a town forever changed. We are taught that courage is about fighting your own battles, but that's a lie. True courage isn't the absence of fear. It's asking for help when you are broken. Mark learned that day that family isn't just the blood you're born with. It's the people who show up, no questions asked, when the entire world has turned its back on you. Share this video. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that heroes are real. They don't always wear capes, and they don't always follow the rules. Sometimes they wear leather.